common interior design mistakes that you're possibly making in your space and how to fix them. That is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. So welcome back, or welcome if you're new. First off, just want to say thank you to everyone who has been sending me photos of their rooms in their homes for free design advice. I am getting to that video. It's just going to take a bit of time to compile everything, but really excited to do that video. And everyone's space is so different and has, I guess, different needs. So I'm looking forward to doing that. There were quite a few that were sent in. So I think what I'm going to do is just pick the first few, like first in best dress kind of thing. So anyway, that is coming. But yes, today talking about common interior design mistakes and what you can do to fix them, what you can do to avoid them. Because I think sometimes people are making these mistakes without really realizing, and oftentimes it's a really simple fix. So let's get into it. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about, and maybe you've guessed it if you've seen some of my other videos, is lighting. And the reason why I want to talk about this and why I always talk about this is because for me personally, I think it's one of the most important things to either make or break a space. A lot of people only rely on overhead lighting to like illuminate a space. And the problem with that is that it can cast a lot of shadows because it's coming from directly above as opposed to like wall lights. And it can also make the room feel quite flat if that's the only lighting that you've got. So the way to fix this is you want to have layered lighting, which I've spoken about before. You want to have a few different types of lighting that can interact with each other in a way that's going to make the space feel warm, illuminated, ambient, create a better atmosphere. So the first thing that you'll have is your ambient lighting, which is your main light source. So that can still be ceiling lights. I'm not saying to eradicate ceiling lights, but that's sort of like your main source of light. So it might be a pendant, surface mounted light fittings. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to start to layer that. The next thing will be task lighting, which is more focused sort of light. So that will be things like lamps, reading lights, maybe LED lights under your cabinets for things that are more focused, where you're actually doing tasks that require a certain type of lighting. And then the third thing will be accent lighting. And these are kind of like the more decorative things that make your space feel warm and inviting and ambient. So that might be wall sconces, it could even be candles, things that kind of give that real touch of je ne sais quoi to a space. So the things that are going to interact with those main lights, so the overhead lighting, the task lighting, these are kind of the more decorative pieces, the things that offer that sort of nuance to the space. So in adding these three types of lighting and layering them in the way that I've just described, this is going to make the space feel cozy. It's going to remove any sort of sense of coldness or dullness from the space. It's also going to highlight things like your furniture, your homewares, your styling pieces in a really interesting way, as opposed to just having that heavy light coming from above. Another thing to do is to install dimmers with these lights, because that also gives you more flexibility in how to play with the level of light in the room. I would always encourage you to have dimmers on at least the overhead lighting, which is a big one, and then also the ambient lighting, so like your table lamps and things like that. Task lighting, not so much. I feel like that can be a little bit more flexible in terms of it doesn't necessarily need to have a dimmer, but dimmers are a really good way and a really easy and effective way to enhance a space. You can buy dimmers now. I'm pretty sure you can get like bulbs that come with dimmers, like from IKEA, or you can download apps that literally you can control the dimming from your phone with certain light bulbs. Like I think Philips has an app that you can use. So yeah, that's the first one, is to reassess your lighting and how you can make it better and more layered in your space. Mistake number 2 is ignoring scale and proportion. Have you ever walked into a room where the furniture feels too big or too small for the space? That's probably because whoever has bought the furniture has been not paying attention to the proportion of the space and the furniture in the space. You might walk into a living room and there's a huge L-shaped sofa, sectional, and the living room's too small. It can't hold that, so it makes it feel really cramped. Or on the flip side, you might walk in and there might be like a really small coffee table that has a lot of space around it that makes the space feel a little bit empty, like it hasn't been filled properly. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about scale and proportion. So the way to go about this is when you're buying furniture for your space, let's say you're buying furniture for your living room. If you have a larger space, it's really important, I think, to have pieces that anchor the space, that really fill it out in a way that makes it feel grounded. So If you're getting a sofa, maybe think about getting something a little bit more heavy or that has a bit more weight to it, that is a bit more robust, so that you're filling out the space rather than focusing on getting something that's really dainty and light and maybe has like a light frame. That's not a rule necessarily, that is just one way to go about it if you don't know where to start. Of course, you can buy lighter pieces with more delicate frames, but it just means you need to fill out the space a bit more. But then on the flip side, if you have a smaller space, you don't want the space to feel cramped, think about buying furniture that is open underneath. So when I say that, maybe it's elevated off the ground in some way so that you've got legs with an exposed base so that the room feels more airy and less cramped. So for bigger rooms, use large, chunkier pieces to fill out the space and then work from that. Then you can add in smaller pieces to fill it out. But with smaller rooms, you kind of want to do the opposite. You want to pick pieces that are going to make it feel a bit more open and light and like you can see under furniture, which gives that visual effect of having more space. Mistake number 3 is pushing your furniture up against all the walls. This is a common mistake, and people think that just because the wall is there, your furniture needs to be up against it, and that's how the layout should be. Don't be afraid to put your furniture into zones, into sections of a room and move them off the wall. So for example, if you have a fireplace, that's your main focal point. Don't feel like you need to have, a sofa up against the wall looking at the fireplace. You can have it going parallel to the fireplace. You might have like your fireplace here, sofa here, and 2 armchairs, as opposed to having fireplace here, sofa here, looking directly at the fireplace. Putting your furniture up against walls can seem like the way to go, but it can often make a space feel a bit disconnected and like it hasn't really been thought through. But if you have a small room, try to break your furniture away from the wall, which is like I was kind of saying in my previous point. If you are trying to create this illusion of space, having space around furniture, having space underneath furniture is always going to make it feel more open and less crowded. Instantly, that's just going to create a much more fluid space. It's going to feel like it's been more considered. And again, you can still create zones in smaller spaces, but I encourage you, if your room allows it, to move your furniture off the walls. Mistake number 4 is overcrowding and under-decorating. So when we're talking about decor and homewares, there's 2 extremes. You can have way too many homewares that make a space feel cluttered and overcrowded, or not enough in a way that makes the room feel empty and kind of a little bit lost. The key is to find like the balance in the middle ground of how to put homewares and decor items in a space without making it feel like one extreme or the other. So instead of just trying to fill your space up for the sake of filling it up, there's a rule that you can use that will help you to kind of compartmentalize your items. So it's the rule of 3. So when you're looking to style like a bookshelf or a coffee table or open shelving, the rule is to group things in groups of 3s. So you might have varying heights, but it's kind of like you're bringing things together in a way that draws the eye and kind of eliminates clutter. For example, on a coffee table, you might have like a stack of books, a little vase, and a smaller dish, and you kind of group that as one thing. And that just helps to avoid and eliminate a sense of clutter, and it looks like it's more considered and curated. On the flip side, if your space feels too bare, you can try and add in textures that will add kind of another layer to the space. So that might be rugs or pillows or statement decor like vases or knickknacks or things that you've collected on your travels, homewares that you want to have on display. You want to try and find this balance between having too much or too little. You don't want the space to feel empty and dull, but you also don't want it to feel like it's been overcrowded and overpopulated with things where your eye doesn't really know where to look and it's not really curated in a way that suits the space. The last mistake that I'm going to talk about is not mixing textures and materials. And when I say not mixing, I'm saying you should be doing this. If you have a room where every finish is of a similar style, so let's say you have timber floorboards, you have a timber bookshelf, a timber dining table, timber coffee table, timber legs on your furniture, that is what I'm talking about as it being quite monotonous and not having anything that kind of interjects and makes that space more interesting. So to make your space feel more rich and dynamic, you can start to add in different textures that maybe oppose or like complement each other. So for example, if you have a lot of warm wood tones, you can maybe offset that with some cool tone things. So maybe that's like incorporating some cooler tone metals, whether that's even just on your cabinets, through your hardware, even just some loose items like candle holders or trays that have a bit more of a cool tone to them. You can incorporate textures through rugs. So maybe you have a jute rug, like a thick, heavy duty rug, and then a wool rug, or something that's more plain and then something with a print on it. If you have like a really textural armchair or lounge sofa, maybe you want to offset that by having like a harder coffee table. Maybe it's glass or something a bit more industrial. So what I'm saying is to play with textures and layer things in a way that will make the space feel more interesting and dynamic, as opposed to just playing it safe and feeling like you really only need to have one or two finishes or textures in a space. So even if you just get on Pinterest and start to look up different types of interiors and see how they incorporate different finishes and textures in an interesting way, and try and apply that, just have fun with it, apply it to your space and see kind of how it changes it and how it makes you feel in the space. So I hope that was helpful. Those are just some common interior design mistakes that I've seen people make, and by no fault of their own. It's not necessarily something that everyone knows, but hopefully that can help you to just kind of reassess and rethink the space that you're living in and how you can maybe make it a little bit more considered. So adjusting your lighting, as I said, using furniture and pieces that are proportional to your room. Avoid pushing all your furniture up against walls if you can help it. You know, don't overclutter your space with decor items, but don't leave it bare and empty. And then also mixing materials and textures and finishes for a bit more depth and dimension in your space. So yeah, that was a bit of a rapid fire video, but as I said, I hope that's been helpful. If you have any suggestions for videos that you want to see or content that you want me to make, I am open to suggestions. Just drop like even a one-word comment below. And yeah, it's been really nice getting comments from you guys and sort of interacting with you and hearing about your spaces, and also, again, as I said, seeing your spaces that you've been sending me. You can also follow me on Instagram, and everything's always down in the description box. And then again, if you have any spaces that you want help with for free design advice, you can send a landscape image and just a brief paragraph about what you want help with to hello@studio-hew.com. And I will try to feature you in the upcoming video. If not, I'll probably do a part 2 depending on how it goes. But yeah, I hope you guys are all having a great weekend. I will also be posting another vlog either this week or next week. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.